If you want to feel more connected to humanity and a little less alone, listen to Beautiful Anonymous. Each week, I take a phone call from one random anonymous human being. There's over 400 episodes in our back catalog. You get to feel connected to all these different people all over the world. Recent episodes include one where a lady survived a murder attempt by her own son. But then the week before that, we just talked about Star Trek. It can be anything. It's unpredictable. It's raw. It's real. Get Beautiful Anonymous wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne, and it's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game personally and professionally. I'm so excited. We've got, I think, Diego, this is number 3, actually.
Oh, nice.
You guesting on the show. So number 3, a three-peat guest. We've got Diego Perez on the show. He's a meditator and a number 1 New York Times bestselling author. He was widely known by his pen name, Yung Pueblo. He has sold over 1.5 million books worldwide. That's probably been higher as we speak right now, that have been translated into over 25 languages. Online, he has an audience of over 4.5 million people, which I was joking with him. The first interview, I think he just had hit 1 million. It's wild to see the growth in such an important topic. That's what fills my heart. So over 4.5 million people. His writing focuses on the power of self-healing, creating healthy relationships, and the wisdom that comes when we truly work on knowing ourselves. Diego's new book, How to Love Better, is available for pre-order and will be released in March of 2025. And I had the privilege of having a advanced copy of the book for the last few weeks, and it's just, especially going through the holidays, has been such a beautiful gift. So thank you, Diego, and welcome back.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's such a joy for us to, have this opportunity to have this chat. And thank you for, letting me come back on a few times. I feel like these check-ins we have are just really valuable.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's interesting because it doesn't, I don't know about you. I mean, life's busy, obviously, but it doesn't feel like as much time has passed. Like we're kind of on a cycle of your books, I'd say, in terms of
Yeah.
our interviews. But I'm looking at you right now in the camera. It's like I feel like, we had an interview last year or something, which we didn't, but we've stayed in touch, obviously.
No, totally. And what's funny too is I like the way that, well, one, how I felt when I woke up. I looked at my schedule. I'm like, what am I doing today? I'm like, oh, I'm talking to Mark. Okay, great. I just immediately
Awesome.
my whole system is nice and calm, and just the way we've been interacting with each other, and you becoming friends with my buddy Cecily, and I just
Oh,
like the
yeah.
way our worlds are kind of moving together.
Love it. Oh, that lands in the heart. All right. Well, you know the drill, or you may have forgotten the drill given how many interviews you do. But on this show, we're gonna release all the bios and start with the same question you've answered a couple times now that evolves usually, and that's just, who are you?
So I am honestly just an individual that's on the journey. Like I come from a place where um really carried so much heaviness in my mind for so many years and was totally oblivious to that. And that caused me to to just build these pretty nasty habits over time where I was abusing drugs and alcohol, pushed my body to the brink, almost ended up dying. In that moment of rock bottom, I realized that what I needed to do was start telling myself the truth. And once I started being honest with myself, started building better habits, started accepting who I was as I was, um, life slowly started getting better. And then when I picked up meditating, meditating made my mind lighter, decreased the tension so that creativity started bubbling up. I mean, I literally just
Yeah.
had a conversation with my wife. I'm over here signing books at home that are going to get distributed for How to Love Better. And I had this moment, I was like, I never ever would have thought that I was going to be a writer. Like this is what I do. Like this is my life now.
Yeah.
Never saw it coming.
Do you have a hard time accepting that and accepting the success that you've had? Just again, knowing from our past interviews, and you shared a bit of this as well. Like I know you grew up in like a scarcity kind
Yeah.
of mindset or environment, which, like for me personally, we talked about this before, and the listeners know, like I went down that whole app journey, which was a huge rock bottom moment.
Yeah.
And I still, like, even today when something really great happens, I sometimes find, like, it's hard to really let it in because 'cause I'm like, "Wait a second, don't get too comfortable here because you don't wanna go back to that place." Do you
Yeah.
ever have any of that?
Yeah, I think that there are definitely moments of fear when it pops up, and I do have this sort of overarching sense of I don't know how long this is going to last. And that's something that I've also learned from just, observing myself through meditation is like everything is absolutely impermanent. So, am I always going to have the same level of success? I don't know. I have no idea. Like I don't know what the future holds or like how, trends will change and if, people don't care about personal growth anymore, then I'm out with that too because that's what I really care about. But, so I think what I've been trying to do is just kinda ground myself in the moment and then kinda, like, in the background, just do smart things, just do a lot of, like, safe investments, like, kinda just
Yeah,
not play things too risky, and, um, and I think it's kinda nice because that's something like, because of this situation, it's something that I've been able to learn because a lot of my family didn't know how to do this. They didn't know how to make safe investments. Like, they were struggling to always pay rent and put food on the table. So I'm one of the first people in my family that's like, okay, how can I take care of all of my responsibilities and then still be able to give, still be able to support my mom and dad? And so it's a very new position.
interesting. Well, and it makes sense now too, also the affiliation or the partnership with Wisdom Ventures
Yeah.
there's a financial give back there, obviously, but there's also a bunch of wisdom and mentorship and knowing the team over there. It seems to continue whether you intentionally kinda set down this mission or not, it seems to really support that, "Let's give back," like you're in a different position from your history, I guess,
Y
right?
Totally, and it's funny too, because like, with the Wisdom Ventures, this VC firm that I started with Cecily and Jack Cornfield and a bunch of other great people, um, it's been amazing to be able to support founders in this way where we're not just trying to, like, invest, but we're trying to, like, really help, like, support your integrity and your virtue as human beings,
Yeah.
and one of the coolest things that my co-founder Jack was able to do was he, like, led, a meditation for a bunch of engineers at OpenAI, and that was,
Awesome.
like,
Yeah.
like, these are people who are gonna go on and one day build their own huge companies, and nothing's gonna stop them, but hopefully they have a sense of compassion. They have a sense of
Yeah.
self-awareness. They're like, developing their non-reactiveness or developing these qualities that are really important to have as a human being.
Yeah. Well, and for sure, I obviously 100% agree. I mean, I think important to has a hu as a hu to have as a human being, but then essential to as a founder of a brand new company or someone leading a team and so forth is I mean, this obviously dovetails into the mental fitness work that I do with corporate teams, but it's like as soon as a mind stops working, so does the brand and the company, and, like, it's almost we know this, but there's still some old programming around,
Yeah.
well, that's not productive, right? And it's starting to change, thankfully, and I think it's starting to change because of a lot of the work that you're doing and the crew over at Wisdom Ventures and the fact that you're prioritizing, you
Mhm.
know, someone's, well-being and their health and just getting clear and whatnot. It's like, could we all the ripple effect, we all win.
No, it's huge, and it really just like, whatever's happening in your mind is permeating throughout the entirety of your life, and that includes the things that you create and your relationships, like, whatever it could be. It's just
Yeah,
what you're experiencing in here, the tension that you might be experiencing or the joy, it's just gonna reverberate outward.
yeah, so true. So how you've written this is the 4th book now, right?
This is the 5th, How to Love Better.
5th. 5th, okay. I missed a book in there then. We missed an interview. So you've written the reason I asked that though is that it's I find it well, I guess the main question I have is why this book? Why this topic now?
So this book it's called How to Love Better, and I think when I went into the meditation journey, so I've been meditating quite seriously for 13 years now, and I went into it for my own personal healing. And I knew that I wanted to feel more like spacious in my mind, more secure in my mind, more at home in my own mind, and not have it feel so heavy. But I did not expect how doing that inner work was going to revolutionize and almost like create a new renaissance in all of my relationships. And
Mm,
I am so grateful for that because I didn't expect it, didn't really see it coming. And now, when reflecting and looking back on it, I'm finding that whenever you take your personal growth seriously, it's going to have an impact on your relationships, and normally a very positive one, because
yeah.
you're going to more deeply be able to connect with yourself. And that just brings down the walls, brings down the tension that's getting in the way of you connecting with another human being, especially with someone that you love.
Yeah. Well, this is what I've really enjoyed about this book is it's almost like a beautiful dance between how to love others and relationships in like kind of the direct sense of the word, but also of course like you can't have that to your point without loving yourself.
Yeah,
And like it's a
absolutely.
beautiful mix of back, because when I first saw the book title and didn't really jump into it, I was like, oh, is this a full topic, I guess you can say, on relationships with others and so forth. Like that was the knee jerk thought, and then quickly that was, yeah, it's a huge part of it, but it's actually a hell of a lot more. And it doesn't it all just come back down to love at the end of the like love, and like I think of the heart. That's why I kind of asked like why this book, why now. I feel like just in reading it and following the topic in general from others also is like every tradition, every whether it's a religion or philosophy, seems to all come back to this fundamental, heart center love and so forth. But I feel like you can't write that book first. You've got to
Yeah.
go down, you've got to go down the other, in your case, the other books, the other journeys to get to this place.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like this book is, I knew it was something that I wanted to write, but it had to wait because I needed to just like keep growing, just keep trying to understand the way that the attachments that I'm like clinging to are creating difficulty in
Yeah.
my mind, and how that shows up in my relationship. And it's been really sort of interesting having these almost like two big chapters in my marriage, where like my wife and I, we first got together when she was 18 and I was 19. And then the first 6 years of our relationship were quite chaotic. It just felt
Yeah.
like a giant hurricane. And we just, had very little self awareness between the two of us, like very little emotional maturity. Like we didn't really know, like we loved each other, but we didn't really know how to care for each other. And
Yeah.
that took a lot of learning. And once we both started meditating, um, over time, we started realizing as we were individually building our own self awareness, like we were arguing less, we were being calmer when we would have disagreements, and our ability to listen went through the roof. Like we were
Yeah.
really starting to be able to like really tune in to like what is it that that I'm missing from her story that helps relieve the tension in my mind. And
Yeah. Sounds
it's
very mature.
yeah, we're trying, and
Yeah.
we have a long way to go, we're still in process, but it's been really nice learning these core lessons that have stabilized and harmonized our relationship.
Well, and the fact, I think we talked about this in our last interview because I remember, because I went through something similar with my wife. Like, it's nice that you guys evolve together because
Yeah.
you can see how, if that, you can see how there's such a high divorce rate when, like, there's probably multiple points in that avenue where you could have went down completely different forks in the road, but somehow with the work, obviously, decided you prioritized and put value on similar things, and here you are today,
Yeah,
right?
and I think a lot of that is just like we're so accustomed to loving the person that we initially got into the relationship with, and we're forgetting
Yeah.
that human beings are literally beings of change. Like we're constantly evolving, constantly growing. Like this whole universe that we live in is in this constant flow that's moving forward, where everything is changing, so you're also changing, and if you fight that, life is going to get quite difficult. So what does that mean for your partnership? It means that the person that you're loving today is not going to be exactly the same as when you first met, and that's okay. That's actually, if you support their evolution, that doesn't mean they're going to leave you. It just means that their preferences are changing, what they like, what they don't like, what they
Yeah.
watch on TV, what, their passion projects, like, that's actually part of the one of the fun parts of the relationship is getting to know your partner over the years and understand them again and again because they're interesting to you. They really,
Yeah.
pique that curiosity for you. So I think letting each other evolve is just like key.
How did you notice any evolution or any changes in your relationship with Sarah while you were writing this book?
Yeah, this book was probably the most sort of like I've really just checked with her very deeply with, what am I sharing about us? Like, is this cool with you? Because people, it's not just for me to
Yeah.
decide. Do these lessons that I'm saying, do they really make sense? Because I've meditated a lot of hours, probably like around 12, 13,000 hours, and she has as well. So like I really trust her wisdom, even though she's not a
Mhm.
writer, she has a ton of wisdom. So when I think for this book more so than the others, like when she read through it, she, made her own tiny changes and was like, is this really what you mean here? Or do you want to add X, Y, and Z? And it was wonderful having that opportunity to collaborate in this way because in some ways this is as much her book as my own because we built our relationship together and I'm sort of just narrating and bringing these stories and putting them into book form on our behalf.
Yeah. I love it. So when people pick up the book and however they navigate through the chapters and so forth, and irrespective of where they're at in their life and whatnot, like what's what is your hope that's like how do you hope people feel at the
Mm.
end of really, taking in, the lessons and the words in this book?
I'm really hoping that people feel like, if their relationship feels stale, that if they double down on their personal growth, that might be something that sparks new life into the relationship, gives it new vibrancy. I really hope that people who've gone through heartbreak, when they go through the heartbreak chapters, like that they really are able to see themselves better, that they're able to just like understand that this is a moment for self love and also for evaluation. Like it's not just what kind of partner should I look for in the future, but also what can I change about the way that I show up in a relationship so that I can do my part to better hold a
Yeah.
future relationship. And overall, I think the overarching sort of message that feels really important is for any relationship to thrive, it has these three components of kindness, personal growth, and compassion. So kindness being
Mm.
the like sweetness of relationships, the way you're, trying to be gentle with each other in your delivery, in your demands, and just trying to be, bring that sort of safety and secure culture in a relationship. And growth is like because you're ever changing and ever growing, you might as well be the director of your own growth and focus
Yeah.
on developing the qualities that could help you better show up in the relationship. And then the third aspect is compassion, where you want to do your best to train your mind to be able to step outside of your perspective to see your partner's perspective. And this is so helpful because that is the core element that helps resolve arguments. When you're just attached to your own perspective, you're literally not going to be able to see anything else but your own ego. So you need
Mhm.
to be able to train yourself to step outside of it so that you can understand the person who's in front of you.
I think it would be a beautiful, it kinda links to the last, topic you mentioned in compassion, but I think it'd be a beautiful exercise for those in relationship to read a chapter at a time together
Hmm.
and almost, get to the end of the week or whatever it is, and it's like you have a bit of a date and just discuss, like, "How did you perceive this?" And, highlight the book and whatnot, and just carving out that kind of level of connection, I would say. I mean, vast majority of us don't do that. It's like it's because it's so easy to fall into autopilot of whether it's life or kids or career and whatnot that, just to say, "Hey, like, we really need a date night," and is sometimes
Yeah.
super challenging, right? But to kinda, in my opinion, go a step further and really, like, have meaningful conversation on a top like you've I don't know if it was intended to do that, but you provided a pretty good guidebook to facilitate that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that people reflect on it, whether it's by themselves or with their partner or even with friends, like having it be a conversation piece where it's like, this is what resonated, this is what didn't resonate, this is what I would add to, this list or this thing that he said. Or I think it's all of my books aren't meant for people to fully agree with. They're meant for reflection,
Yeah,
right? It's like
yeah.
it's like
That's
this
why you and
this
I get along.
yeah, it's like this is what's worked in my life, but your mind and my mind are quite different. But I can offer this to you, and you can reflect on it and decide what's good, what's not good. You take what's good, and then you build on, for your own, so that you shape it in your own way for you.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of reflection, I mean, there's just so many I've highlighted almost every page of this book. Like there are so many powerful reflective prompts, and you know me well enough that I'm a bit obsessed with good
Yeah.
quality questions. That I feel like this one, and the page numbers might change a bit, but 301. This this question, Diego, just like knocked me back around. Like, well, this is the whole book. Like, you can use this question for the subhead of the book, in my opinion. If you are ever in doubt about how to love your partner, just ask.
Yeah.
And, like, you sub out partner for friend, or I'd say even more powerful, yourself. Like, take a minute, open up a journal. We have the answers to those questions when it comes to ourselves. It's just we need to ask the question. Where did this question come from? Because it's one of those things where you're like, "Well, yeah, obviously," but we don't ask it.
I know, and it feels so obvious, but I feel the strong tendency in my mind, and I see the same thing in others, where we want people to read our minds. Like, if
Yes.
I've been around
So
you long
true.
enough, I want you to be able to read my mind. It's not happening. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like it's instead, you have to have the courage and the authenticity to just be honest. Like, put your cards on the table, show them, tell them, like, this is how I like to be supported. And then after a few months pass, tell them again how you like to be supported, because that's gonna change as well. Like the
Yeah.
way that we loved each other, like my wife and I in 2021, is just so different from how it is now, because we've been growing, we've been continuing to meditate,
Yeah.
we've been continuing to reflect. And I think that's like one of the key pillars of relationships, is having that honest, non-judgmental communication, and always feeling like, hey, like, I need this, or I don't feel good right now, or just letting your person know that, what's going on in your mind.
Well, and I like the idea that you alluded to or shared around continually asking. I think
Yeah.
is also something that's really understated in so many ways. I mean, I can't remember the exact quote, but there was something in one of the sections around even even checking in with ourselves and the notion of continually letting go. Like it's not just a one shot deal. Like we but it's like I don't know if it's just the way that society's programmed and the way that our world functions. It's like give me the solution, I'm gonna do the thing, and then everything's gonna be fixed, and I'm gonna move on to something else, which, there's some truth to that, but I think for the what we forget is, well, wait a second, no, we need to check in
Yeah.
over and over again with ourselves and our partners and our relationships, and to your point, like, we need to continually go back and release, like hence, I mean, how many meditation retreats do you do per year? I mean, I'm sure you haven't reached
Yeah.
this point where, like, "I got nothing left. Nothing to let go here."
That's so funny. I love that because yeah, it feels like we live in this like Uber, DoorDash society that's just
Yeah,
like, give it to me now. I'm gonna give you $40 and I'm gonna get exactly what I want, and the problem's gonna be solved. And like
totally.
you literally can't do that for personal growth and for relationships. And if anybody's like offering you a cure-all that's gonna just solve your problem in 7 steps, no way. You need to go the other way, because like life
Yeah,
is highly dynamic, highly situational. So, it's good to pick up different tools and whatnot, but some of the most beautiful things in life that you can get are not going to have an easy fix. They're going to require you to like show up over and over again. And even what you mentioned, like letting go, it's not something that's easy, and it's not something that just happens overnight. It's like we have deeply ingrained patterns in the mind. And if you have this strong tendency towards anxiety, it means, okay, well, let me meet my anxiety over and over again, not add any more fuel to the fire. Let me just feel it in my body and train myself to not get overwhelmed by it by literally just being present with it. And even
Yeah.
though that won't make anxiety disappear in the totality of your life, but if you keep training yourself in that mode, it'll help it so that anxiety won't be as intense as it used to be. And this is one of the reasons why, like, when I go away to meditate, like, I keep going away because I've seen all the memories in my life, right? Like, spent so many hours meditating, like, so many 30-day meditation retreats, 45-day meditation retreats, that my memories are unexciting to me, right? I see them, I've
Sure.
seen them so many times, but what is interesting and still allows for a lot of training is that the emotions still come up. Like, the emotions will
Mm,
come up, and you're not trying to make emotions go away, but it's like, "Oh, I have this new challenge to be able to really feel this thing that's coming up and not run away from it and just accept
yeah.
it and be able to befriend it as opposed to being afraid of it." So, that type of training is just so invaluable.
So how do you approach your retreats present day? Like, do you go in with an intention, or are you going in with, we'll just let what needs to surface and without any kind of expectation?
Yeah, I go in. I think it's just one intention is just to observe. I think in the
Mm,
past, like, there was this you know, this sort of desire, like, oh, I want to overcome this, I want to overcome that. And I found that very quickly to be unproductive. Like, whatever's going to come up
okay.
is going to come up. And like, the
Yeah.
mind is so vast that you can't like pick and choose what you're going to necessarily work on when you go in there. So I think the best strategy is to let things organically unfold, and whatever experience arises is what arises. And now I'm going to cultivate equanimity and non-reaction towards it and just observe it. And I find
Yeah.
it's like I'm literally like sitting down at the edge of the universe just studying the way things work. And to me it's like it's awesome. I don't
Fascinating.
need to tell the universe what to teach me. I'm just going to watch it all unfold.
Yeah. Oh, well, this might answer a bit of the question I've been thinking about this just in general, I would say holistically for many months, and who knows, it may be my second book. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But just this idea of almost like living in between two worlds.
Yeah.
And especially I think this is definitely geared towards people that have been down some sort of journey and have some tools and practices, are reading the books and have been on some retreats and stuff, like, have put in some work. It's I
Yeah.
wouldn't say the concept is for someone that hasn't done anything or hasn't started. But there's almost this feeling, at least for me, where it's like you have the tools, you are reading the books, and in one instance feel like supreme confidence, and like in a flip of a coin, massive self-doubt. And it maybe it's just me, but I feel like it can't be just me. Like, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you because it's almost like with these tools, you become super self-aware, which is beautiful. But at sometimes I'm like, oh man, I wish I was a little bit number, in a way, because like you feel at a whole other level, right? And I joke about it, obviously, but I don't have the solution to this. Like, I'm and this is kind of why it's got my mind stimulated to go on a quest or journey of some sort to understand. I don't think we ever just live in one world, but is there a way to make it a little less torturous in the mind when it comes to when you're navigating, you're flip-flopping from back and forth and whatnot. Like, what do you think about something like that?
You're making me think so much. I was listening and then I just like moved into like what the actual book looks like and what it's shaped like, and like
Okay.
it's such a valuable book. Um and I think you should definitely write it and consider interviewing people that you know who take their work really seriously, because we're all experiencing that. We all go through these
Yeah.
moments where it's almost like you're half of a new person and half of the old person, and
Yes.
and you're just like
Yes.
you're like in motion, you're in this like liminal space, like you have made a ton of progress. Like, I can feel, like, especially for me, my relationship with anxiety is so different than it used to be. Still feel anxiety, but it's for a fact it's not as intense as it used to be. But there are moments where it still feels like pretty strong, a little overwhelming. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you're still there. And there's so much in that, because there is also like a chapter about releasing the attachment to perfection, because that's
Mhm.
one of the things that we all kind of very deeply crave, where it's like,
Yeah.
if I'm doing this work, then I shouldn't have this problem at all ever again. But is that really what it's about? Isn't it more so about being able to handle the ups and downs of life? Because things are still going to happen. Like people are still going to pass away. Like friends are going to, have hardships that you're going to be able to feel. And that's still going to bring up all these emotions in you where, because when you care about someone, like you feel with them. And,
Yeah.
but dude, that would be a sick book,
Well,
like, and
thank you. I
yeah,
mean, I it's just I mean, I'm sure you experience this all the time. For me,
yeah.
it's
Let
just
me write the forward.
I
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
invite accepted on that one. It's just I'm at the point where because I find to write the first book, it was really hard. I
Yeah.
don't consider myself a natural writer, and I think even if you are a really good writer, it's still, as you know, very hard. So
Mhm.
my promise to myself was I feel like there will be another book at one point, but it has to be in a point of not that I'm ready to write it because that I don't think you're ever ready, but the topic has to be just like oozing out. And and I'm like, well, 3 maybe 3 months ago, I was like, oh shit, I feel like I'm at that point,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
I can't stop thinking about it.
that's a real book that I would read, man. I think it's just so interesting to be able to hear, because it would be fun too to like get a nice set of different people, like, someone who's been a therapist for like 20, 30 years, or someone who's been meditating for a
Exactly.
long time. And, just different people who are doing the work and still feel like there's still a lot more to be done. And
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds really
Yeah.
exciting.
Well, and just understanding it, I wanna know a little bit about the science behind, what's actually happening, 'cause I don't
Hmm.
know on
Hmm.
that side, and then to your point, various practitioners, and I obviously, grab the interviews like this and do a whole series that go with the book at one point. So, anyway, enough about the, my future book, but thank you. Uh I do wanna talk I pulled a bunch of quotes, and I feel like we can kinda jump around a little bit with our remaining
Sure.
time, because they're so valuable. The one that I'd love to move into now it reads as follows: "Moving at your natural speed is one of the most important ways to love yourself." I just and there was a couple other lines afterwards in just alluding to, obviously, we move at such a fast pace, and it's almost I don't know if I'm paraphrasing correctly, but it almost feels like if we move slower, it's like like you're punishing yourself or that you shouldn't be doing that. There's a lot of shouldn'ts on that one, but in reality, from what I was picking up, and I think in other work too, when we can slow things down, obviously slow the mind, the body, and everything, like that's where the insight usually comes up.
Yeah.
So let's just tell me a little bit more about that line.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a repeated lesson that I've been seeing in my life that I'm learning to more deeply adopt each time it comes up. I think the first time it popped up for me was when I first started meditating in the earlier years, like 2016, 2017. There was this group of guys who were just always at the meditation center. We're always there, constantly doing courses back to back, and I would go to the meditation center maybe like once every 3, 4 months and do a course or serve a course, and I felt this like almost like jealousy of like, dang, I wish I could be there all the time, but I knew that I couldn't tolerate it. Like I needed to go back to my
Mm,
regular life to just relax and, keep working on writing and just keep building my life. Um and I was able to just like appreciate their strength and also recognize that I'm not really losing anything, right? I'm not really like I'm
yeah.
still in progress, still on my way and honoring my natural speed. And it's really funny. I just made a new friend recently who's a fantastic guy, Sahil Bloom, and he is,
Oh, yeah.
does has a big newsletter following and is big in different places and just a fantastic human being, has so much integrity and is so kind to people. And when we started talking, I'm like, man, this guy's a workhorse. Like he works so
Yeah.
hard. And it's been really funny. letting myself be inspired by that and be like, "Oh, I also have, like, more capacity, like, I can do more," but at the same time, not trying to match him because
Yeah.
I know my limits and I know, where I can burn out and whatnot, so it's been an interesting thing just, like, being like, "Just own your speed," like, move at your
Yeah.
speed, and when you feel healthier and stronger, sure, do more, but, like, respecting your need to rest is, like, just such an important thing for the long-term journey.
Well, I like that I like that balance of, excuse me, like, pushing yourself, but within boundaries
Yeah.
that, that you've worked really hard to surface. And, like, you don't wanna diminish all the work that you've done knowing that, okay, this is how whether it's how you like to work or where you'll say yes, where you'll say no, and so like, knowing those kind of goalposts,
Mhm.
but still within there, striving to progress and move forward and so forth. It's
Yeah,
a good distinction.
I'm always thinking about sustainable growth and like for,
Yeah.
as an individual, like, what is going to help you run this marathon and not sprint because then you're just going to exhaust yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, One of the last quotes I wanna pull, then we can start wrapping up, but this one I'm really curious, and this probably links to the book concept we're talking about. Um, Many traditions around the world that have there are many traditions around the world that have ways of cultivating the human mind and elevate the mind. I'm curious just from your research and your work, like what are some, obviously meditation is one that we hear a lot about and more, but have there been any practices or traditions and that you've observed that like I don't think a lot of people know about this one or this one's unique or interesting.
Mm.
Like anything that comes to mind intuitively.
I've been learning, and I wish I knew the name of this tribe, but I just learned about one recently that I found so interesting. That's much more communal, and
Okay.
it's much more like when someone in the group makes a mistake or does something that's like, needs repair, they're not like kicked out of the tribe, they're brought into the tribe. They're brought deeper in. And,
Interesting.
people are sort of taking like the individuals taking accountability, but collectively everyone is like holding them not in a punishing way for accountability, but just like moving with them through this process. And
Wow.
I think it's interesting because there's a lot of ways for individuals to heal themselves. And I think especially when we're making interpersonal mistakes and not necessarily kicking someone out and being like, okay, you're exiled and gone, banished from whatever group you're a part of. And instead, owning that a mistake has been made and allowing the person to learn and grow from it. I mean, this is something that like when you make a mistake and you're like a 9-year-old kid in your house, like and you accidentally like mess up the dishwasher,
Yeah.
your mom doesn't give you the boot. Your mom's like,
Yeah.
okay, like this was really bad, but let me explain what happened and all that. And I
Yeah.
feel like as a society, we have a lot to learn from it. But I think it's pretty incredible because I think the word meditation gets grouped as this like, one thing, but the
Mm.
varieties, there are so many different types of varieties, so many different Buddhist types of meditation that are from, Theravada, from Tibetan Buddhism, from Mahayana. There's like all these different Vedic styles of meditating that are like either mantra based or bliss based or what. But when you actually take a look at it, it's like you're entering into almost like an encyclopedia's worth of different styles and traditions. And so that's
Yeah.
usually where I keep my attention, but, I think we would be surprised by the same way that we have so many different therapy modalities, like, that's how it is for meditating too.
Well, that and I feel like the idea of not being alone all the time. Of course, there's meditation, in your house alone, but then obviously like you prioritize going to another location with a group of people, and it just made me think when you mentioned the tribe or the community, and because
Mhm.
there's such an epidemic of loneliness out there right now
Right.
that people feel so lonely and it's obviously not doing really doing well for our mental health. It's really escalating things, and I've seen it as well. I've been doing this series on demystifying psychedelics from someone that really has zero experience with these
Cool,
medicines, is
cool.
just trying to understand the traditions. And I would say, when speaking with tribes and different people across the world, like, it's this sense of community, and it's to your point, it's like in North America, it's like people go and do their trip over the weekend, and then they're in the jungle, then they punt out on Monday, and kind of coming back to what we were talking about before, like all is fixed. But like when you're in the tribe, like they go into the ceremony as a tribe, and then they stay a tribe
Yeah.
and continue working on this stuff, right? So I don't have the solution to how we can help or like leverage some of these medicines and without completely stripping away the importance of that tradition, that sense of community. But it's so strong, and I think you can apply that to everything that you're talking about here as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting at like one of the biggest challenges for the Western world because we're so like our society is so money oriented, and so like we love mixing and matching things together, and it's like, oh, if
Yeah.
this is good and that's good, it would be even better if we mix them together, and that's usually not the case for
No.
these like tools that have been developed over thousands of years. And I heard something so funny from I have this fantastic, Chinese medicine doctor that I go see, and he was telling me about his teacher, you know, where in Chinese medicine, whenever they're like referring to how to cure something, they often refer to like the oldest text, and they're like not.
Yeah.
Whereas the inverse for what we do in the Western world, which is like we refer to the most recent study. For them, it's like they refer
Yeah.
to the oldest study, and then the Chinese medicine doctor who trains the guy that I go to, he was like, "Listen, if you ever think that you figured something new out, you didn't." And you have to
Yeah.
go learn more because actually we've been like this has been around for many thousands of years.
Totally.
So like let's just have the patience and like, the ego to focus on utilizing and preserving as opposed to like, constantly trying to like put our own spin on things. So it's very different. It's
It's
challenging.
oh, it's for sure because it's the world that we live in, and you have to be like every sense of the definition of being open and like
Yeah.
trying to release like all the preconceived notions of science and like what we consider science. Because even I have a co-host on that series who's the opposite of me, who's doing a PhD in this work and in beds with these tribes. And he often would say, and this always sticks with me. He said, they'll invite me in, but the first thing they say is like, you have to leave. We'll teach you, but you have to leave your Western science at the door,
Yeah.
because what happens here, you can't explain through your current knowledge of science. And then they go on and refer to us as their little brother, in terms of in terms of technology, which I found also really fascinating because it just goes to show, I mean, there's so much we don't know.
So
It's not just
much.
there's so much.
And I feel like there's so much value in having that humility to be like, okay, let me like suspend my disbelief. I'm not just gonna immediately start judging, but let me just hear
Yeah.
these people out. Especially if they're like result oriented and it's like we do these X, Y, and Z because they give good results, then like, yeah, something should, you should listen. But it's funny because I was just talking to a neuroscientist and we were having this great conversation about meditating, and I let them know, I was like, one of the things that I've noticed about the Western world is that too often when we talk about the mind, what they're actually talking about is the brain. And
Mm,
that's part of the mind, but like when we think about it from a like Theravada context, like from
yeah.
that originates from the Buddhist teaching, like the mind stretches throughout the whole body, right?
Yeah.
The mind is even the guy who teaches Esen Goenka, who teaches the Vipassana tradition that I'm a part of, he talks about there being mind in every atom of the body. And
Wow.
that's not something that we're quite there yet, right? And it's like
No.
hard to perceive, but I think it's like it's good that we have different takes on how
Yeah.
things work.
Yeah. Well, and I think we just need reminders around like a bit of a humility check every now and then that like, hold on a second, there's been, communities and tribes and ancestors that have been around for thousands of years that
Yeah.
some like everything, like, everything we're like, to your point, everything we're talking about, and I often think about this with journaling and these, like, I'm not inventing any of this stuff. It's been around since the beginning of time. It's just I think we're all trying to do our best to to include a narrative that at least resonates and opens the door for people to explore
Yeah.
in however way, they can get there. But, yeah, let's not forget, I mean, there's a lot we don't know, and this stuff has been around and been tested for a long time.
Yeah. No, and it's really I think that's one of the beautiful things about this moment in human history. It's like we all could benefit from cultivation, and I think some people have benefited beautifully from like journaling or self-reflection or just telling themselves the truth, and that like immediately activates like a whole new like chapter in a person's life. And then like, I love meditating and it's so good for me. It's not good for everyone. Like
Yeah,
people need different things. Like, I have family members that have benefited so much from having a really good psychiatrist, literally like
yeah,
saving their lives because they have a good psychiatrist and they're,
yeah,
using good medicine that's helping stabilize them. Other family members that have made giant leaps with therapy, friends who've like, done indigenous rituals that have really helped them. It's just like you see the giant spectrum of possibility,
yeah,
and I wanna honor that. Like, all this stuff doesn't need to
yeah.
be combined into one thing, and
No.
just know that what works for you may not necessarily work really well for your partner or your best friends. They may need their own
Yeah,
things because everyone's mind is shaped differently.
and also maybe different in different chapters of your life,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Like, I used to be, I got into breath work because I found meditation really challenging, it wasn't clicking, and now it's almost the reverse where I feel like I can feel when I'm, like, being activated, I'm like, "I need a longer meditation."
Mm.
And I just need to let things sit, and I never had that before, and, I'm talking it's not hasn't been that long, maybe this may be going a year or so back, and it's just a different chapter.
Yeah.
So now it's like this beautiful experience. I'm almost looking at your work in revisiting it in a way because I've read it from a different chapter of my life, and now it's evolved to present day. So
Oh, that's really cool.
yeah, it's wild. It's wild. Well, last question for you because we're at time, and that's just kind of bringing this all full circle for you personally, Diego. We're starting a new year. How do you want to love yourself better this year?
Oh man, objective number 1 for this year is optimizing sleep. That has
Mm,
been
yeah.
like that's been on my I listened to this one podcast where uh Stephen Bartlett had this amazing woman who was just she's like a sleep coach for athletes and like
Oh,
people.
Kristen, she's been on here. Kristen
Yeah.
Holmes. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And
yeah,
and I was like, this is the bomb. I was
yeah,
like, "This is
yeah,
so important," and I was really realizing that my, like, 7 hours a night, 7.5 hours a night, like and always kinda waking up a little tired, like, I'm like, "I'm not doing it quite right." Like, I need to kinda
yeah,
level this up, so, I feel like the meditating has been so beneficial, bringing in exercise has been really beneficial, honing my diet, and so, like, this year where I'm gonna love myself better by sleeping.
yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
You'll appreciate. So I remember because Kristen was on this show mid-year last year, and for those listening, she works at Whoop, and great kind of sleep tracking device and so forth. But I remember, I think you'll appreciate this. I remember asking, so Kristen, I know this might be a little bit counterintuitive to your work, but if you were to actually put the devices away, is there a question that you would ask yourself to help gauge your sleep? And she had such an awesome response. She said, "Am I sleepy when I want to be sleepy? And am I alert when I want to be alert?" And I'm like, that doesn't get any more
That's
simplistic
so
than that,
cool.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I'm with you on that though. Sleep is critical. So, Diego, this was I mean, we could obviously continue for much longer. I every conversation we have, every text we exchange, I mean, you honestly, I feel it in my heart, and I really want to thank you for you obviously making the time to continue to come back on the show, but a higher thank you, and you know this, but just every word that you write, the ripple effect that it has around the world. I mean, you can't even measure that. It's just
Yeah.
something I hope you're so grateful for, because we're grateful for that. And thank you for showing up each day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm profoundly grateful to be able to serve, to be able to put some inspiration out into the world and help people reflect. But I'm also, Mark, like so grateful to you too. Like, thank you for the way you show up, and just thank you for having me back on, and just like having these moments together. They feel really powerful. So grateful to you.
Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Chris Gethard, and I'm very excited to tell you about Beautiful Anonymous, a podcast where I talk to random people on the phone. I tweet out a phone number, thousands of people try to call. I talk to one of them, they stay anonymous, I can't hang up, that's all the rules. I never know what's going to happen. We get serious ones. I've talked with meth dealers on their way to prison. I've talked to people who survived mass shootings. Crazy funny ones. I talked to a guy with a goose laugh, somebody who dresses up as a pirate on the weekends. I never know what's going to happen. It's a great show. Subscribe today, Beautiful Anonymous.
Stop wasting time scrolling through endless clickbait, social media, and emails trying to keep up with the news. Instead, listen to all the news you need in just 10 minutes.
Welcome to The Newsworthy.
The Newsworthy podcast makes it faster, easier, and more enjoyable to get unbiased news on the go.
It helps us navigate the news without feeling overwhelmed.
Even when my time is limited.
So much detail and information in 10 minutes.
Listen now by searching The Newsworthy in your podcast app or go to thenewsworthy.com.